Okay, I'm back with more 3D printed parts for this machine. So we have the motor controller, which is going to be in the box underneath the Pico motor controller. The gearbox that's driving the machine will have a cover on it, and the mount for the chassis will, if I get it lined up, sit on top of the cover. Now we have to have the limit switches that limit the rotation of all this. So underneath this cover, this gearbox cover, we have a channel up here where when the limit switches pass through this channel, they will get activated. So the limit switch has a little lever that gets activated when it goes through that channel. The limit switches will be mounted on this arrangement here. So there's two limit switches, and they're 270 degrees apart. So one limit switch here, one there, and when this cover hits one, it'll activate this switch, and when it hits the other one, it'll limit the travel in that direction. So these little limit switches will mount like this, and the wires come down to the terminal strip, which will be mounted here. So I'm going to start mounting this stuff. This guy bolts on here, just under the cover there, and we'll just see how all that fits. But before I bolt all that together, I want to just show that the Pico is now controlling the actual motors. So let's, well, we don't need this, but just to see the rotation, we can put this on here. I'm not even going to tighten it down. Hopefully it'll move. But let's turn it on. And we can see element 14, experimenting with extreme environments using Hammond manufacturing. Then it says PicoPorch. The motor state is still. The Pico temperatures. The basement here is a little cool, but it should be warming up with all this equipment running. And the motor state will stay still for, I don't know, half a minute or something. And then it will start rotating it clockwise, which it's doing now. And after that's stopped, it will stay still, and it will eventually rotate counterclockwise. And it's just going to go back and forth every once in a while, just to demonstrate that the Pico is controlling the motor controller, and these things actually control whether to stop it or not, the limit switches. So the motor controller is all working, and it is actually set up to listen to some extra inputs to tell it when to rotate and when not to rotate. But I don't have those switches hooked up yet. I seem to have misplaced my reed switches. However, I'm going to hook up this mechanical stuff and see if the limit switches actually line up properly. Okay, I've wired up the terminal strip, so the motor is coming in here, and the two limit switches are also coming in here. And I've wired up this big cable, which is clamped down to the chassis, and it has bootlace connectors on the other end, which can feed through this gland and connect to this motor controller, which will be inside this box with the display. And I've confirmed that these switches are in the right position to trigger when this guy rotates in position to trigger the switches. So the geometry works out. Everything is mounted solidly. I just have to put the cover on here and wire this box up a little bit, and then we'll see how it works. Right, all wired up. So here we have the motor controller in the box, wired up to the motor controller cable, and we'll just assemble this and see if it works. Alright, there it is, all together. That, folks, represents a lot of work. Alright, here's a quick demo of the Raspberry Pi Pico running its PicoPorch program. It's just booting up here, and it says the motor state is still. Pico temperature is 17 degrees now. And so the motor controller is connected to the motor that's driving this platter, which has a camera inside this Hammond case. And it's just running a program that rotates it periodically. So now it's rotating clockwise. And it's either gone as far as it wants to, or it hit the limit, because the limit will stop it if it rotates too far. And it's gone back to the still position. And it stays still for, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute. I don't remember what I programmed into it. But the next state should be counterclockwise, and it should rotate. There it goes. So it's coming back. Ultimately, when I get a Pico W in there, I can control that from my phone and dictate where the angle it's pointing is. But until that time, I'm just running the Pico open loop, and it's periodically rotating to different angles. But it's great. All of the hardware is working. The limit switches are in the right spot. They stop the rotation when they need to. There's no interference. There's lots of all the tolerances are good. So the mechanism is working properly. This thing will even shield from rain falling onto the gearbox. We've got the motor controller cable all connected. It's 6 wires, and it's all waterproof through these glands. So we're using 2 Hammond waterproof cases here, one for the motor controller and one for the camera. There is another camera on that tripod in the back, and then that stand, the black stand there, is a third camera. So there are 3 camera ports here. The 2 glands are not connected to the cameras yet, but that camera is working. Well, both of those cameras are working, and the one that goes in here still needs work. I have a Raspberry Pi 3 running a Raspberry Pi high quality camera, which will fit in there, but that wasn't the original intention. So but it is the backup plan, so I might just pop it in. It is already working, just I haven't done the brackets, the internal brackets for these boxes yet. So that should be good for another video blog.